budget policy statement and the adjustment budget to the House. This is the third MTPBS of the sixth administration under the leadership of Premier David Makhura. Let me begin by tabling the following documents for consideration by the House. I'm tabling the medium-term budget policy statement 2020-21, the adjusted estimates of provincial revenue and expenditure 2020-21, the adjusted estimates of capital expenditure 2020-21, a copy of my speech. Madam Chair of Committees, the MTPBS that we are presenting today comes a few weeks after our country's successful sixth democratic local government election. These elections were different from the previous ones. They were organized in a short period of time, in about 42 days, and the contestation amongst all political parties was far more intense. The elections culminated in a peaceful transfer of power in some of our municipalities in the province and the country. These honorable members clearly demonstrated the strength and maturity of our democratic system and the respect that our people have for the supremacy of the Constitution. As Gauteng Provincial Government, we once again congratulate the people of this province for exercising their democratic right to vote in the local government elections. In doing so, the people of this province gave all of us as public representatives from across the political divide a clear message to prioritize service delivery to communities above all other interests. Honorable members, this emphasis on the Constitution and how it has shaped our democratic system is important because tomorrow, which is the 10th of December, our country marks the 25th anniversary of the signing into law of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa by Isitwalandwe Ubaba President Nelson Mandela in Sharpeville in 1996. President Mandela chose Sharpeville for that occasion to remember and to honor men and women who faced the most brutal force of apartheid regime. They paid the supreme price for justice and freedom. The silent emphasis on our Constitution, which are marking its 25th anniversary tomorrow, magnifies a point that human rights are women's rights too, since both rights are intimately linked. The 10th of December is also celebrated as the day on which the United Nations General Assembly had adopted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which was done in 1948. This day was to be known as an International Human Rights Day throughout the world, and this year, both our government and the United Nations have adopted complementary themes. The theme adopted by our government is the Constitution as a catalyst for achievement of equality. The United Nations, on the other hand, has adopted a theme, equality as the solution to provide opportunities within and access to a fair and more inclusive society. Honorable members, these two themes elevate an important message for non-sexism and equality, not only in our country, but throughout the world. It is until we win a struggle for equality that we can defeat the demon of scourge of gender-based violence. In our country, Madam Chair of Committees, gender-based violence has reached unbearable proportions, wherein every day we read about violence, displacement, and brutality against women, children, and members of LGBTIQ+ community. It has become a pandemic of a special type, which requires extraordinary interventions and actions from all sectors of our society, and they must do that in partnership with government. Therefore, honorable members, these themes galvanize everyone in our country and the world to stand up for human rights as we review and reflect our country's lived experience of constitutionalism, working to strengthen the constitutional values of human dignity and the achievement of equality and advancement of human rights, freedom, non-racialism, and non-sexism. The third significant, directly linked to the 2 points I've just transversed above, is that the 10th of December marks the end of 16 days of activism for no violence against women and children. This is yet another campaign adopted by the United Nations together with International Human Rights Day. This year we mark this campaign under the theme, The Year of Charlotte Maxeke, 16 Days of Activism, moving from awareness to accountability. Government has declared gender-based violence a scourge and another pandemic. And to this end, gender machinery in our country must move one gear up from awareness to accountability. We must all of us be activists against GBV in our homes, in our communities, in our workplace, and in positions that we hold in society. Let us challenge cultures and practices that perpetuate gender inequalities and abuse of women and children at personal and societal level. Honorable members, as we present this year's MTPBS, we must acknowledge the difficult context within which we must fund the implementation of our provincial priorities over the next 3 years. This was demonstrated on Tuesday when State South Africa released the latest gross domestic product figures, showing that South Africa's economy contracted by 1.5% quarter-on-quarter and on a seasonal adjusted basis, following our 4 consecutive quarters of negative growth. The latest contraction is largely reflective of the effects of the civil unrest in July, as well as pressures of tighter COVID-19 lockdown restrictions during the quarter. Although the contraction was somewhere expected, it was more severe than the South Africa's Reserve Bank's latest forecast of minus 0.6%. This also implies that GDP is now at the level recorded in the first quarter of 2016. These difficult times were also reflected in last week's labor force survey report that was released by State South Africa, which showed that our country's third quarter unemployment rate reached a record of 34.9% from 34.5% in the second quarter. What was also disheartening was the report showed that Gauteng's unemployment rate reached 37% in the third quarter from 34% in the previous quarter. We are particularly concerned about the high unemployment levels in our province, especially among young people. It is a matter of grave concern to us that in a relatively rich province such as Gauteng, where we continue to see high and deepening levels of poverty. However, we are of the view that the economic growth and recovery interventions that we're implementing in partnership with the private sector, labor, and the rest of society, which are aligned to our Growing Gauteng Together Vision 2030 plan, are the most direct and effective route towards addressing the socio-economic challenges that we are facing. Therefore, in 2021 adjustment budget that we are presenting today, we continue to focus on our 4 priorities, and those 4 priorities are defeating the COVID-19 pandemic. The second one is reigniting the Gauteng's economy. The third one is recalibrating social policy, and improving governance. Honorable members, the risk presented by COVID-19 to the speed and sustainability of economic recovery and growth at both national and provincial levels cannot be overemphasized. Since the outbreak of COVID-19 in our country, Gauteng has been the epicenter of this pandemic. On the 7th of December, this province passed the 1 million mark of COVID-19 cases from 6th of December. The province also entered the 4th wave on Tuesday. On the 1st of December, the rate of increase in the number of new COVID-19 cases have been significantly higher in the past month compared to any period during this pandemic. The new Omicron variant that was first detected in our province has been linked to this rapid transmission. The rate of severe illness and hospitalization due to COVID-19 is also increasing, albeit at a slower rate, and majority of these admissions are not vaccinated against the virus. We encourage all eligible people in the province to get vaccinated against COVID-19. In order to beat the adverse effects of the 4th wave, we've expanded and strengthened the vaccination drive to ensure that as many people as possible are protected from severe illness, hospitalization, or death in the event they contract COVID-19. The vaccination program is free and open to all people in South Africa, regardless of nationality. According to information from the Gauteng Department of Health, as of the end of November 2021, this province had vaccinated more than 4.4 million people. The number of those who were fully vaccinated in our province stood at just over 3.6 million people. In addition to vaccination, We call on our people to continue practicing non-pharmaceutical interventions to limit the spread of COVID-19. These include wearing of a mask, washing of hands regularly with soap and water, and avoid large gatherings. As Gauteng, we continue to mark substantial resources available to fight COVID-19 and to save the lives and livelihoods of South Africans. The more people get vaccinated, the greater the chances of us fully opening up all economic sectors and getting back to doing things that we love most, including attending sporting events, cultural entertainment activities under the safety protocols of the new normal. Honorable members, the global economy is expected to experience a stronger recovery in 2020-21. International Monetary Fund projects the world economy to recover by 5.9% in 2020-21 after contracting by 3.1% in 2020. IMF has in fact revised up the growth prospects for advanced economies, while growth for emerging market and developing economies, widely referred to in economic cycles as the emerging market developing economies, which was revised down. National Treasury estimates that the economy will grow by 5.1% in 2020-21 and by 1.8% in 2022. However, there are risks to this outlook, including setbacks in the fight against COVID-19, such as vaccine-resistant mutations and the possibility that the electricity supply could become further constrained. Turning to the provincial economy, the real gross domestic product by the region, which is called GDPR of Gauteng, rose pre-pandemic from 1.1 trillion in 2017 to 1.2 trillion in 2019. Though we are a year-on-year growth rate of only 0.6% in 2019. In 2020, COVID-19 brought reduced demand in all trading partners and the need for lockdowns to slow the spread of the disease. These combined factors reduced the province's GDPR to 1 trillion, a fall of 6.8%. Our forecast is that GDPR for 2020-21 will increase by 4.7%, recovering to 1.1 trillion, and we only surpassed the pre-pandemic production levels in 2023. Metropolitan municipalities were responsible for 90% of Gauteng's economic activity in 2020. The city of Johannesburg recorded the largest contribution at 44.3%. It was followed by our administrative capital of the city of Tshwane with 28.5%. The city of Ekurhuleni accounted for 19.7% of the Gauteng economy. The two district municipalities, which is Citybeng and the West Rand district, accounted for a combined share of 7.5%. All of Gauteng's municipalities recorded negative growth rates in 2020 as they suffered reduced demand and economic restrictions from the pandemic. The largest negative growth rate was recorded in Citybeng, where GDPR fell by 7.8%, while the smallest was recorded in the city of Johannesburg at 6.2%. In 2020-2021, all municipalities in Gauteng are expected to recover and record positive growth rates. The highest focus is for the city of Ekurhuleni, where GDPR is predicted to increase by 5.1%, and the lowest is in the city of Tshwane, which we will see an increase of 4.2%. Honorable members, we remain fully committed to accelerating the implementation of our response plan to preserve jobs, to grow the economy, to create new employment opportunities for the citizens of the province. Let me briefly reflect on the significant progress made by our economic response plan, focusing on key areas, which is the first one is the SMMEs and township enterprise empowerment. The second one is infrastructure as a catalyst for corridor development. The third one is partnership with private sector. And the fourth one is special economic zones, which we call them high growth sector. We are promoting and facilitating investment in special economic zones. We believe that SEZs are the investment anchors for development of network industries in the province and reduce the cost of doing business. As a result, various special economic zones are currently being developed in strategic areas in our province, including the high-tech SEZ, VAL SEZ, OR Tambo International Airport SEZ, Tshwane SEZ, and Western Corridor SEZ. SEZ-related construction programs began in August last year, and the investment in these projects have increased from 2.5 billion to 4.3 billion. So far, the business case is that all technical reports, master plans, and studies have been completed for the high-tech and science SEZ in the industrial area, which is in Tshwane. In addition, construction in the Eastern Corridor has begun at Bonarero Park, where 9% of construction has been achieved. As part of SMME and Township Enterprise Empowerment, the Gauteng Enterprise Propeller in this financial year allocated 10 million as its capital seed contribution towards establishment of the Retail Support Fund. This fund focuses on the full spectrum of the township retail value chain participation. The Gauteng Enterprise Propeller will increase its contribution to the fund by 10 million each year over the next 2 financial years. Honorable members, the riots which saw shops vandalized and looted in July affected more than 18,000 jobs in the province, and the cost of business in the province is estimated at 3.5 billion. In response to Gauteng Provincial Government, we established an online application management system in October with the option to use the regional offices for direct disinvestment of joint Gauteng Economic Propeller and Industrial Development Cooperation Rapid Response Funds for distressed township businesses. The support is up to 50,000 for informal businesses in grant funding and up to 1 million for formal businesses, which is 50% of grant of the grant, and that 50% we take it as a loan, the other one. This is an addition to our township revitalization program that we have been implementing to reposition the economy by using government's significant procurement muscle to drive economic inclusion and broad-based Black economic empowerment. As part of this program, we have crisscrossed the province, doing, amongst other things, registering township enterprises on the central supplier database to ensure that they access opportunities in public sector. During these outreach programs, we also created awareness about e-invoicing, a platform that allows service providers to submit their invoices online and track them, which is a major innovation in our ongoing effort to ensure that suppliers are paid on time. Since April 2019, we've procured goods and services from thousands of township suppliers to the value of 7.4 billion. Our message to township suppliers is that registering on supply database is free. No one must charge you for a service that is offered by our government for free. Honorable members were also encouraged by the progress that is made to implement the National Economic Recovery and Reconstruction and Recovery Plan, which focuses on infrastructure investment, localization and reindustrialization, and export promotion with an employment orientation and supportive policy environment. Given the size of our economy and contribution to the national gross domestic product, Gauteng will benefit immensely from these national initiatives. Honorable members, we continue to make a steady progress towards clean governments in this province. A total of 17 departments and entities achieved clean audits in the financial year of 2020-21, an indication that government is making steady progress in strengthening financial management, which is in line with the commitment to promote clean governance and accountability in the usage of our public funds. This is the first time in this 6th administration that we achieved this number of clean audits. It demonstrates our commitment to promote clean governance, accountability, and the integrity of our public institutions. Honorable members, the 2020-2021 MTF budget that I tabled on the 1st of March 2021 was premised on 4 priority areas of the Gauteng COVID-19 response plan that would be to focus on resource allocation. This budget was formulated against the backdrop of severe resource constraints and fiscal consolidation measures that were necessary in the short, to medium term, which are expected to end in the 2024-25 financial year. As the financial year has progressed, we've gone through the second and third surge of COVID-19 pandemic and now find ourselves in the grip of the fourth surge, which will further dampen the positive signs of growth that were beginning to emerge. Despite the structural impediments that the Gauteng city region, together with the rest of South Africa, must overcome to break free of the low growth trap. This is over and above the economic recovery and reconstruction plan, which, while formulated to revive the economy in the wake of the devastation caused by COVID-19 pandemic, become more urgent after the destructive civil unrest that we witnessed in July 2021. As was the case when tabling the 2020-21 MTF main budget, there is very little fiscal leeway available to us. And this requires that we become conscious to the reality that we have to do more with the resources that we have and actively seek alternative sources of funding for the GPG projects and priorities, either through partnerships with private sector, state-owned enterprises, other spheres of government, or through bilateral or multilateral development partners as a way of leveraging on resources outside the fiscals in achieving the objectives of the sixth administration. To this end, the Gauteng Provincial Treasury has formulated a document to review that not only clarifies the process of seeing and receiving official development assistance, which you call donor funding, but also outlines the various sources, bilateral and multilateral, and mechanisms for accessing such funding across infrastructure and non-infrastructure priorities. This will enhance the work of the Gauteng Infrastructure Financing Agency, which we call it GIFA, in doing so and exploring mechanisms for accelerating the delivery of infrastructure as a means to achieve the ideals of the GGT 2030 plan. Working within this challenging economic environment, Gauteng Provincial Treasury is constantly looking at various ways to enhance our own revenue collection, to supplement funding of the provincial priorities. Our own revenue enhancement strategy was approved by EXCO on the 31st of March 2021. Gauteng Provincial Treasury is leading the rollout of the implementation and will ensure that the relevant provincial departments and public entities remain committed to mainstream the identified activities towards optimal revenue collection. The updated estimates revenue of 3.7 billion over and above the baselines is projected over the 2020-2021 MTF. The information will be updated as and when information related to new sources of revenue become available. Honorable members, Gauteng Provincial Government remains committed to public infrastructure delivery. The National Development 2030 provides us with a clear roadmap on how to eliminate poverty and reduce inequality. Infrastructure remains a key pillar in achieving these goals. Gauteng Provincial Treasury recognizes that infrastructure delivery is dynamic and that as a collective we must solve complex problems before the impact of our investment shall be visible. Based on the portfolio of evidence submitted by the various departments, we have had to adjust infrastructure budget to 11 billion over the total investment of 10.6 billion, which is allocated to the Departments of Human Settlement, Department of Health, Department of Education, and Department of Roads and Transport, whilst the remaining of 506.7 million is allocated to Departments of Economic Development, Social Development, Agriculture and Rural Development, Sports, Arts, Culture and Recreation, and Infrastructure Development. We urge these departments to improve the impact of our investment on service delivery on social gains. In March 2020-21, with the appropriation of the main budget, we highlighted the need to place more focus on making infrastructure affordable and enhance value for money, thus ensuring effective, efficient, and economical use of public funds that are related to infrastructure investments. We still have a long journey to walk before we will see the results that intended the impact. Although it is difficult under the leadership of the Center of Government led by Babu David Makura, we remain committed to continue with our reform initiatives to address the institutional blockages as well as the weaknesses within the infrastructure value chain. Our specific focus will be on the implementation of standardized cost guidelines, ensuring that credible business cases are prepared before funds are allocated, and working with all stakeholders within the infrastructure space to ensure that we can respond to the challenges that we face. The infrastructure cost guideline establishes prescribed standardized approaches for projects procured by Gauteng Provincial Government. The key objective is to make infrastructure more affordable and obtain value for money. This is in response to costs which are currently too high, poor output results, and low investment impact in terms of service delivery and social gains. The infrastructure cost guideline will promote good governance and prudent financial management. Thus, it is an integral additional part of the evidence-based budget reforms introduced by Gauteng Provincial Treasury in the 2016 financial year. Honorable members, today we are adjusting the fiscal envelope upward with a net increase of 7 billion. This means that the overall budget of the Gauteng Provincial Government increases from 1.142 billion that I presented to this House in March and to the adjusted appropriation of 149.5 billion. The 7 billion includes a total of 4.3 billion that is added to the provincial equitable share, which of 3 billion of this is to cater for the public sector wage agreement. This shows that as government, we care about the plight of our workers in these difficult times. As part of Gauteng COVID-19 response plan, we're making the following allocations: 5.4 million towards the health human resource response plan to COVID-19, and 1.2 billion for the Presidential Youth Employment Initiative funding towards the Basic Education Youth Employment Initiative. And it will be 1.1 that goes there. Health staff and assistant nurses will get 74.6 million, and social development social workers will be receiving 43.7 million. To ignite the Gauteng economy, we're making the following allocations. A total of 114.4 million is allocated for technical adjustment from underspending infrastructure projects towards the Tshwane SEZ and infrastructure expansion. We call it TASES. That is expected to not only boost manufacturing, but also to provide much more needed jobs and stimulate the economy. A total amount of 86 million is a reallocation from surrendered surplus funds towards GEP program on contract financing to support SMMEs. A total amount of 366 million from internal reprioritization of underspending infrastructure funding towards Gauteng Management Agency patronage guarantee shortfall. This amount will be clawed back from the roads and transport in 2022-23 and 2023-24 budget baseline. In terms of conditional grant funding, we're making the following resources available: an amount of 13 million towards statutory HR component of human resources and training grant towards January 2021, additional intake of medical interns and community service cohort, an amount of 7.1 million towards the mental health services component of the HIV and AIDS, TB, malaria, and community outreach conditional grant programs, an amount of 25.6 million towards the subsidy component of the early childhood development conditional grant. During this adjustment budget process, a total of 665 million in conditional grants and 1.2 billion in provincial equitable share funds is being rolled over to honor obligations for the 2020-2021 financial year, together with 465 million that was allocated from the previous financial year. Honorable Speaker and Madam Chairperson of committees, despite the challenges that we face due to the COVID-19 pandemic, government remains committed to accelerating the implementation of our provincial priorities. Gauteng Office of the Premier is going to be allocated an amount of 14.9 million to fund payments for mental health care users. Gauteng Department of Education is going to have a reallocated amount of 378 million for personal protective equipment. Gauteng Department of Community Safety is allocated an amount of 8.3 million, and this amount includes 3.2 million which is a reimbursement of stipends paid to patrollers on behalf of the Gauteng Department of Human Settlement, and 3.8 million is for agreement with SANRAL for the provision of law enforcement agencies to enforce traffic laws. Gauteng Department of E-Government is allocated an amount of 79.2 million for the funding of SEP Unlimited during deployment licenses and enterprise support. In conclusion, Madam Chairperson of Committees, I would like to emphasize the point that I made earlier in my speech, that resourcing the budget in these resource-constrained times requires that requires that be there an appreciation from all of us, particularly within the government, that we owe it to those whose name we serve to jealously guard these resources and deploy them where they will make a maximum impact, which is possible. Diabulela, Madam Speaker, but before I sit down, we have to inspire the confidence of the people that we judicious steward, that we are judicious steward who can be trusted with public funds, that we can be trusted with public funds. We also have to be cognizant that having to make to do with less resources, we are expected to deliver more, which is part of the pain that we have to endure in ensuring that we bequeath a sustainable fiscus to the generations to come. Lastly, Madam Chairperson of Committees, let me express my appreciation to Babu David, Premier Wetu, David Makura, for always being there to provide us with leadership, with guidance and support as we implement the program of the 6th administration. My colleagues in the executive and the Premier's Budget Committee for continuous engagement, support and teamwork that is there. Honorable members of the House, in particular the Chairperson of Finance Portfolio Committee, under the leadership of Honorable John Mbisi, Honorable Sokayile Kanyile, our Chairperson for SCOPA, for their diligent oversight of our provincial finance. The Gauteng Provincial Treasury team that is led by HOD Ngumisa Mnyani for your tireless work and commitment in managing our provincial resources and supporting departments and entities, including municipalities. Finally, let me thank my family for their support that inspire me each and every day. That makes me to be standing here proudly so in front of you, Madam Chairperson of Committees. Thank you so much.